Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's Dualta, and in this podcast series, I will be speaking to investors, advisors, entrepreneurs, and recruiters who are based all over the world, and we will be discussing how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment company. Today's guest is Adam Bailey. Really excited to have him on the podcast because he is only in his first quarter as a business owner. So he has partnered with a friend of his from school who's doing the back end and finance for him and leaving him to be free to build the company he wants to build. So we jumped into all his planning and, he's been in the industry for about 12 years. So I wanted to figure out all the stuff that he learned in that time that he wanted to take with him to set up Pro Data. And yeah, he was a great guest. And he's really passionate about what's going on in recruitment. He's opening his eyes to different ways of doing things, and he's got a clear vision for the future. And look, it's not been like a real easy decision for him to come out on his own. He is a father of three, a sole provider, and this was a major deal for him to go and set up this company. It is all on the line and he's putting himself out there. So I hope you all enjoy this podcast. I certainly enjoyed interviewing him. Good morning, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Yourself?
Not too bad at all. I'm still working out of the home office here, which is proving a little challenging. I think I'm on the home straight towards getting back into an office. This was an experiment that hasn't worked out.
Yeah, I actually listened to a few of your podcasts last week, so I do know that you have two children, right? And you're in between offices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have three, so I trump you.
Oh, man.
And yeah, so I have 6, 4, and 3. Thomas, Callum, and Megan. And once you're outnumbered, you'll definitely need an office just to get away and get stuff done.
Yeah, I know. Half of my thoughts are, because we're in the south of England, like I'm kind of in between Chichester, Littlehampton, and Worthing. I'm in a village, and I have to be honest, none of those towns are that inspiring for me to go in and get an office in when I'm not necessarily doing a tremendous amount of business there.
Yeah.
If I was in London, though, I think I'd be more excited to get in there and be around other founders and that. Or maybe there are things happening down here that I don't know about. What's your own circumstance? Do you work in a co-office? Do you have your own office now, or?
So I've got my own office, which is a 20-minute walk or a 10-minute drive from my house in St Albans, which works really well. I do work from home occasionally when the kids are at school, but what I find is that I get dragged in and drawn into lots of domestic chores, which is fair enough, but it's good to have that space just to get away and to crack on for a few hours. And I typically do 10 till 3 in the office every day, but I have a sort of an always on mentality. So I'll be speaking to people at 9, 10, 11 at night, first thing in the morning. And I think I want to avoid work-life balance, but it's always working. And I think if you're happier, generally, you're a better recruiter.
Yeah, I made the mistake. Well, what I do is before I go to bed, I usually turn my emails off.
Right.
And just as I was turning it off, an email came in from a client.
It wasn't from me, was it?
No, an email came in from a client in Australia saying, you have done something wrong with representation here. It's going to another rec direct. And I was like, oh, man. So then I had to kind of get on to my team and say, what happened here? And then I'm digging into this, and it's coming on 11 p.m. And I'm like, my head starts racing again. I'm going, no, this is the wrong way to start the week.
Yeah, I get quite a lot of stuff done first thing in the morning. So whereas I used to wake up with the kids at 5 a.m., they sleep in a little bit more. But I'm still very much an early bird, and I think you can get quite a lot done between the hours of sort of 5 and 9, and that allows you to go and do other stuff. Take the kids to school, pick them up, and then crack on back into it.
What does that morning routine look like from from like, do you get a workout in? Do you like what do you
Well,
kind of do?
occasionally. So yeah, so it used to be a case I'd be at the gym every morning at 5 a.m. or I'd be doing running because I used to be involved in sports, did a bit of boxing. But now I'm getting older, 38 years old, and I've obviously got this business. Do I really want to be getting up at 5 in the morning and going running on the road? So generally, first thing in the morning, it'll be up, coffee, Barocca, obviously, and then straight into emails, getting some of the admin done so that when the world wakes up or when people get into work, I can start speaking to candidates and clients.
When did you stop the boxing?
I stopped recently, so I was actually going to do another one in March, but the reality of the level and it's 2 or 3 hours a day if you want to compete. I mean, it was sort of white collar unlicensed level, so we're not talking about anything ABA or anything more than that. But you still need to be fit. You're still getting punched, and it's still in front of 500-600 people. So I realised about a week ago, I thought, you know what? I don't really need to do this anymore. What I want to do is spend those hours either with family or in the business.
How many fights have you had?
I had 10. I won 7.
Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah. So it's not the white collar for cancer research.
So that's what it started as. So the first one was a charity event, and I was like a rabbit in headlights, completely underprepared in front of 1,000 people in Camden, and it was a humbling experience. I then decided to go for another one, which went pretty much the same way. So two losses. Everybody's saying, look, maybe this isn't for you. But then I decided just to get really fit and commit to it. And then I went on a winning streak from then.
Oh, good on you. I asked because my fight is coming up.
Oh, right. I didn't realise. So this is your first one, is it?
Yeah, it's my first one. And I think I'm 10 years older than everybody.
Okay.
Which it's okay. So we've only started the sparring, and we're 5 weeks away from the fight now.
Okay.
So it's it's daunting. It's daunting enough. I haven't boxed before, so
no, as long as you don't go mad and just realise it's boxing, not fighting. Typically, the people that lose are the people that will go mad. So you almost have to lose the first round to win the fight. So
really?
So if that person's coming at you and is really putting everything into it, just sort of let them do that. And with the belief and the hope that they tire out, because if they don't, you're in for a long night. That's my advice.
I've done a bit of martial arts before.
Okay.
And I think the instructor picked up on it, so he kind of has me fighting the tougher guys in the room already in sparring. I'm like,
well, that'll help you out. That will help you out, but let's just hope that you don't sort of step in with somebody. I'm sure you'll be fine. It'll be a great experience. You'll earn some good money. And yeah, I mean, it's all very safe. You've got head guards and there's paramedics there, which they won't need. So you'll be good. Definitely keen to know. The
sparring's pretty brutal, though, eh?
It is. Well, it's not a normal thing to get punched in the face, Dualta. You have to sort of train yourself into that, but that's what the sparring's for. And typically, when you have people who it's their first time, they will try to, spar a bit harder than you should. And I used to be guilty of that. But if you can find somebody that you get on with and you help each other as sparring partners, then that's how you're going to learn. But listen, hopefully we'll be talking about this in a couple of years and you'll have 10 fights and we can set something up.
I think this is my one and only.
Yeah.
Physically, so I don't mind the fighting, but like that's fine. But my hamstring's gone already. My left hip kind of gave me a bit of bother. I did an overhand left and cracked a guy, and I could feel one of my fingers go. And I thought, like, I'm just too injury prone for this.
Yeah, it's not just the fighting; it's the training. The training is really really stressful on your back and your lower back because there's a lot of turning, and it's and your hands. Obviously, if you can crack somebody, and you can get some injuries that can sort of damage you. But it's quite a stressful situation too because it's the build up, it's the apprehension, you don't want to lose, and you're sort of being everybody else there. But afterwards, it's a really big high. So you'll love it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So I've stopped drinking, and I got a personal trainer.
Ah, okay, taking it seriously then.
Well, so I lost all movement, or lost like most movement in my left shoulder last year when I was doing jiu-jitsu.
Right.
I was in America and some guy dropped me on my shoulder, and just wrecked it. And so I've had to really build up from scratch. So that's been kind of fun doing that, and then just drinking's just not as much fun in your mid-30s as it was
No, it's harder to recover, right? And
when we were younger.
yeah, and obviously if you have a hangover, if you're unfortunate enough to, then you don't get anything done. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
So you spent the last few years getting fit,
Yes,
and having children. You recruitment's like a second career to you, right?
I'd say I wouldn't call it a career. It's definitely a life, right? So I wouldn't say it's so much of a second career. I've been recruiting now for 12 years.
Oh, you've been in for 12 years, all right?
Yeah. So started a long time ago. So if you go right back, I mean, I'm 38 now. I went to catering college and wanted to be a chef, but realised there wasn't any money in it. And sort of at 18, sort of working in restaurants, unsociable hours, low pay, it just didn't really sit right with me. Went into sales. I actually started off doing door-to-door. So this was before the internet, really. This is how far back it was. I mean,
what age are you now?
I'm 38 now.
Okay, you're just a few years older than me.
Yeah, so back in 1998, I mean, you didn't have voucher codes, which is how people get discounts now. For example, there are other discount providers, obviously, but door to door, we were doing promotions for Perfect Pizza, gyms, pubs, just knocking every door, selling cards, which effectively give you percentages off Pizza Hut or Perfect Pizza, for example. Now, very, very tough commission-based work, but it really sort of taught you the fundamentals, sort of stickativity, the law of averages, working your numbers. I mean, you could walk all day long in the freezing cold and get a sell right at the end of the day. And that's stuff that I still take with me now when I'm on the phones and if I'm calling.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for a couple of years, which was a tough graft.
Tough.
And then made the transition into an office with a phone, which was fantastic.
You thought you'd made it then, right?
I did, but then still it was before, believe it or not, we used to have the yellow pages. So I was selling alphanumeric telephone numbers. So 0700 flowers, for example, or you basically get in the morning, you'd figure out all the available numbers and you'd have to work out which ones you'd sell. And then you'd go to the yellow pages to that section, 0700 man and van, and you just call them all up and try to sell them this number.
But it's interesting how much the world has changed from then till now, but yet so many people I speak to, even on this podcast, are still using the same exact processes to do recruitment that they did back then.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the reason why I sort of had to go on my own, because those processes, whereas they are core fundamentals, what I've seen in the selection of agencies that I've worked in, not all of them, but there is that, well, we've always done something this way, that's why we do it, and that's the way it will always be. And that never sat right with me. I think the world is definitely changing. I'm finding this more as I'm working on the business, not just in the business. And unless you can adapt and evolve, then I think we're in trouble.
What type of stuff do you do to work on the business instead of in it? I know recently you had a picture of old Bill Berman.
Yeah, so it's been a bit of an awakening for me, if I'm honest, because if you think about Pro Data Recruitment, we opened this 3.5 months ago, right? So this is a new venture, but it's a 12-year sort of model, if you like, and it's a running start. So I was working in somebody else's business 3 or 4 months ago, and when you're working in a business as a recruitment consultant, you don't actually appreciate what goes on around the business. Okay, somebody looks after finance, somebody looks after marketing, somebody gives you your CRM systems, somebody tells you what to do, and more importantly, what you can't do, which was always the problem. You have to work in this vertical, you have to speak to these people, you have to wear a suit, you have to be at the office at 8 o'clock, you have to do late night Tuesdays, all these things that I'm fundamentally against. So when I actually opened up this business, lucky because had some people on the peripheral that were going to bring us business in because they'd known us for years. I didn't have to worry so much about the new business side of things. I haven't picked up the phone since I've had this business to do a sales call.
So you have equity in your name.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically the way I do business these days, it's people I've placed or hiring managers I've worked with. I've either placed with them, or if I haven't placed with them, I've offered them a very good service and had people at the races. And they've moved on because, especially in digital technology, which I work in quite heavily, people do move around a lot. I mean,
and they appreciate good service. You know, in rec to rec, they just expect it, and it's so different.
Yeah, I think everything's changing though. Services are getting better. Companies no longer want to work with just the service that's being offered or just their PSL. These big companies, they do fantastic work and they've got some great recruiters and they've got some great managers. And I think there's clearly enough 40,000 recruitment agencies in the UK, or so LinkedIn told me when they sold me their product. But I think big companies, they have better internal teams now, so they're more inclined to work with somebody like me and smaller teams who can complement and add value rather than come in and try to take over that process.
And you've had like 1,000 recruitment jobs over the years.
Quite a lot, yeah.
So I'm not going to go through them all.
No.
But I wanted to ask you, given that, like, what was the point when you went, you know what, I just can't go and work for another person anymore. I know I've got 3 kids. I need to earn X, but I just have to make the jump to go out my own. Like that must have been something that didn't just come through your head 3 months ago. You must have had both sides of, like, the devil and the angel on your shoulder weighing things up, like on the last 2 or 3 moves that you made.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it came about. I was working for a company in Watford. They look after mainly trades and labour and sort of aeronautical stuff. So aerospace, sorry. And each month, even though I was doing really well, one of the top billers built up an IT set up for them, product and technology, which is still running now. They're still doing pretty well. I think they've got 6 or 7 people in that department. But then at the end of every month, I was just breaking even. And with living in St Albans, it's not cheap. With 3 kids, my girlfriend, she has the hardest job in the world. She looks after the kids. And it is a full-time job. I mean, listen, when I do it for a day... you
don't even have to tell me.
Absolutely. So it came to that point where it was what do I do to improve our quality of life? Now, it's about just being able to do stuff together as a family and not being stressed about work and going in and sort of other situations stressing you out. So I got the opportunity to start up a contracts technology business for a company in Potters Bar. So again, local, right? Now, the idea was they were an executive search. They didn't do any contract. But they used to get in at 9:30, finish at 6:30. They didn't have a CRM system. Everything was via LinkedIn, very slow process. Working with some massive companies, so Oracle being one of them, a lot of the big consultancies. And they said, look, come in and do contracts for us. So I said, no problem at all. So I came in and did that. I built it up, and within 9 months, I'd repaid the investment into me, so my salary and all the systems I had to use, and the sort of the wining, the dining, and the business development. And we were profitable, and we were standalone. I saw at that time that the people that were there, fantastic people, but they weren't necessarily the people that I wanted to continue the journey with. So, I mean, having control became more important, and there wasn't that. So that's the point where I sort of decided, well, something has to give, but you have the same constraints. You have a salary, you have a company car, you have bills coming in, and unless I had that investment, which would obviously dilute my control, I just could never see it happening. So October this year, I decided to put all of my savings back myself and say, okay, I've got enough money to maybe run this business for 3 months. Let's put all of that in there. Let's get the systems. Let's get an office. Let's do things the way I want to do them. And I went to an accountant who's a friend from school. I said to him, here's my business plan. I'd like you to be my accountant. Within a couple of hours, he came back to me and he said, look, great business plan, but why don't I be your partner? Now, the key thing here is he's not a recruitment guy. He's a finance guy, and he's a business guy. And he's somebody that I've known since school. We would play cricket together, and somebody that I trust implicitly. So we then had double the funds and double the potential to sort of run it for 6 months. But it's gone phenomenally well after 3 months.
Ballpark, right? What was the funds that you put in to start off?
We're looking at about 40 grand.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can do it on. You don't have to spend a huge amount of money. You just have to back yourself to be able to get up to speed very quickly.
Okay. So let's walk. You obviously knew the marketplace, knew the clients, had the vertical, had a lot of stuff that some people almost have to invent or take a risk on from day one, everything made that a little easier for you.
Yep.
But you also had the cost of running a household, so you have to get that up. You have to also get things up pretty quick. So in that 40 grand, break down what the type of spend was. Like, how much of that went on software, office space? I'm guessing that you took the lowest amount of wages possible to be under the tax threshold.
Right. So I actually, the model that the main barrier that most people have is they think, like, if I go into a business, and this is the way it's always been described to me, if I start up a recruitment business or any business, I'm not going to be able to pay myself for a year, or I'm going to have to take a very small salary. That's something that I couldn't do. So my house costs and my household costs what it costs to run. So that's covered in my salary. And obviously my business partner being running an accountancy firm, and he looks after all of that. So we meet once a week. We talk about pipeline every Monday, and every Friday we look at what's in and what's out. The office cost is relatively small. So I have a friend who has a commercial building in St Albans, and he's given me a sort of an office space on mates rates, which I renovated myself. A job that would have taken a professional a couple of days, took me 2 weeks. but it's good sitting here now looking at it, knowing that it was me that brought it up to speed. And
you should have videoed that.
I have actually got pictures which I'll share with you, but as long as you don't share them on the podcast, that's fine.
Very good.
But yeah, so we've got that. We've got monthly costs with expenses. So I get to see my clients and my candidates and people that I've placed previously, because I think this is the real key thing. Recruitment has become, or always has been, incredibly transactional. I called a guy last week who didn't get the job via myself. He was a candidate, high-level guy, and he's accepted a job at another company. And I said, look, let's meet up for a coffee. And he said, look, I haven't got anything for you at the minute. I said, that's not the point. I said, let's just grab a coffee. Everybody loves coffee. And that's the sort of relationships that I have, because they'll pay off 8 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line.
It's a very Australian way to do recruitment. You don't get anything without 3 coffees.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've worked a lot of agencies before, and every time I wanted to go out, they said, look, this guy hasn't given us anything for 3 months. Don't buy him a burger. And for me, that's just very, very short-sighted. I think you have to build relationships with people, not see them as clients or necessarily candidates, because that's why I don't have to pick up the phone and necessarily do sales calls anymore. Yeah. It's because I can call these people and they say, Adam, do you know what? We need something, or this guy needs something. Can you find it for us?
How talk to me about the technology side of what you decided to use. You were at the expo recently.
I was, and it's something I usually avoid massively, but now I'm looking at things.
You're a buyer.
Yeah, I'm a buyer now, and I want it to be sold to. And I'll tell you what, I was sold to really well, and I didn't buy anything, so can't have been sold to that well. But I was actually impressed. I jotted down a couple of places. I mean, you had all the CRM systems, right? So we use Bullhorn. Right, so it's easy.
Good luck if you ever want to try and get your data out of it.
Well, I've heard all these things, right, sort of out from the other CRM providers.
That's true.
Yeah, and I mean, at the minute where we are, I'm going in fresh, which is a good thing to be, right? So I haven't got 10, 20, 30, 40,000 records, okay? I've got records that I'm now putting in of really good quality people that I'm speaking to on a daily basis, and people that I'm filling roles with, or that I will fill roles with in the future. But technology such as video technology, right? So this is the first podcast I've actually taken part in. I've listened to another one of your podcasts when you asked the guy what he's listening to. And I'll be honest with you, I've listened to Joe Rogan, which everybody does, or the majority. And I've probably listened to more than yours than anything. So before this venture, I was a bit of a Luddite, if I'm honest, but now I'm sort of opening my eyes. So I thought, you know what? I'll be open-minded, sell to me. So all the video guys came round. Interview were pretty good from a sales point of view. But I think it depends on what your proposition is. I'm not going to...
I don't think IT guys want to be on video.
No. And I think...
Given when I'd only did it for 4 years, but...
It depends, because I do IT in the broadest sense, specializing in products and data. That's where I can sit down with people, and if you've got a requirement, I'll probably pull somebody out of my phone and call them there and then. That's great. But I do a lot of other stuff as well. So I do look after a consultancy and work with them pretty much exclusively for their banking clients. And quite a lot of it, you can have fantastic CVs, but quite a lot of it does come down to communications and how they come across. So if I'm doing an MSP piece for them, then that's the sort of value I'd add. I'd ask if they wanted that, because a video with a CV going to a consultancy could help them get through that process a lot quicker.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm seeing the world in that space through 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. 5 years ago, it's interesting to hear that. I can imagine that like video will be massive. You know, I see Audro and Interview battling it out quite a lot. I wonder though, could you not just use Skype recorder and do it that way?
You could, absolutely, but I think what it is, it's more of a proposition from one, because I've looked into it now. I've actually got a call this afternoon to have a full demo. But if we just set up a Skype call between myself or the hiring manager and the candidate, that's effectively an interview, right? If you with this video technology, it would be maybe 5 important questions, 5 reasons people fail at interview. What are they? Great, because they don't do this, this, and this. Okay, fantastic. So I'll go and speak to the candidate. I'll say, look, jump on video. Here's the questions, just like we are, but with video. We'll ask them, and how they respond will hopefully avoid them failing on those points that are the most commonly failed on points, if that makes sense. So it's streamlining the process. As I said, I'm not fully bought into it as yet, but I'm starting to open my eyes to technology because I think it's really important.
I always get a little bit confused by both their message, to be honest. Like a lot of them, like they go around to events and they always want to talk about retained recruitment.
Yep.
And that seems to be their thing. And I think maybe they're trying to say that their technology gives you a better chance at selling retained, and thus you should go for that. I don't know. I kind of get they're going away from the feature benefits and trying to go into your process. So I get a little confused by what they're up to on that from a sales and marketing perspective.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the retained model, because you and I are in quite a lot of the same groups. In fact, I think I was introduced to you via a comment I put on one of your posts. And the retained model is really being pushed heavily on LinkedIn. Now I get it, but I'll be honest with you. One of my clients said to me, the thing I like about you, Adam, is that you don't claim to be anything you're not, right? So Pro Data Recruitment, we offer a really good experienced contingency recruitment service, right? Now for a lot of clients, that's exactly what they want. And some of the clients we work with are huge. So we wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't be inclined, or we wouldn't want to sell them managed service provider or retained services. So we're sort of concentrating on really what we're good at. So on LinkedIn, there's quite a lot of rubbishing of other people's models. And I find that a little bit difficult to sometimes take, because if somebody wants retained, great, go and sell them retained. If somebody wants a managed service provider, more power to you. If my clients want a really good contingency service to complement their teams, I can still get to know managers well. I can still take a brief. I still get FaceTime. I know not all contingency services are like that, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and here's the thing about retained. I've sat next to fully retained, or exec search as they called themselves, and they were doing exactly the same thing as me, only with more window dressing and a longer process.
Yep.
Now, where I think recruitment and retained recruitment specifically is heading is when I speak to Steve Loads who has Recruiter Fuel. I was on his show there, and I had another guest on called James Baker, and what both of them are doing is they're using data to predict fit, and to predict fit, get them into the business, and find, fit, and retain was basically the model that they did. Both at different levels. James is only starting out like a few years, and it's pretty impressive. Steve is one of the biggest exec search guys in the US. And I think if you can go to a client with a proposition and say, we're fully retained, I'll use technology to find the person, we'll prove that they're the right fit. And then whenever we place them, we'll give you a 12-month guarantee and we'll make sure that they're on track throughout that. And I think those guys that are trying to do that, that's a solution that I'd buy that's different to contingent.
Yeah.
But when it's just you need to use sales trickery to get a retainer up front, I'm not so much buying that.
See that would my personality, sort of the slower burn, the sort of high level executive search. From what I've seen, from the companies I've worked for, it just isn't me. I'm much more okay. I get excited by hot jobs, pain points, going out and finding the people and turning it around real quick. I mean, we're talking about a couple of weeks lead time. It should be. With the contracts I've got at the moment, we can turn them around in a couple of days. And for that's what keeps me going. The sort of slower process, because there are companies I've worked with previously, they almost talent pipeline people I know that's a quite a well used term on social media at the moment, but they probably mean it slightly differently. They'll go out there, find out who's there, interview them with no intention of hiring them for another 6 months or so, just so they can have that data that they don't have in the UK. And for me, that's really frustrating. For candidates, it's not the service I want to provide.
Yeah. So I had Adam Gordon on last week, and his technology, they would have been at the expo as well.
Yeah, I listened to it, actually.
Did you? Oh, great. And his whole thing is that the software does all that in the background. So you're not wasting anybody's time. You know exactly who's going to buy and when. And I just think that all that stuff is going to cut all the bullshit out of recruitment and out of the process over the next few years, because it's not sales; it's based on fact.
Yeah, And one of the interesting things is, I was speaking to somebody last week about the value of a recruitment company, and it's changing. Right. So 6 months ago, I had advice that you need to have 20 people. You need to split it contract and permanent. You need to be in verticals, which has been the model for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. With all of this technology, I'm meeting a guy called Ben Kaminsky in a couple of weeks. I met him at the Expo, actually, and he stood in front of me and didn't let me buy. So that's a great way to get me to come to your stall. But it's effectively AI recruitment technology. And I'm going to go and have a look at his platform. I'm going to talk to him. He actually needed some data science people as well. I've probably just thrown it out there. He's going to get bombarded now. But his product was really good. And for me, I think having a much more lean workforce, not having to, companies don't necessarily need to have this big wage bill. If you look at traditional agencies, if they've got 20 or 30 people, you've typically got 5 people that are making all the money. The rest of them, they're figuring out whether they're going to work out, or the agency owner wants to say, I've got 30 people. I don't think that's the proposition for the future. I think having AI recruitment technology, using technology properly, and what we do is we actually use freelancers. I'm not sure if you have many other agency owners that do that, but rather than having somebody sit here day in, day out, I've got people I've worked with, recruiters, really good recruiters over the years, who work some of my roles for me. Obviously, it all comes back to me, and we pay them a decent fee based on the value of the actual placement. So I think there's lots of changes going on in recruitment, and hopefully we're on the right track.
Yeah, I'm going to jump into that with you.
Yeah.
So you sit down with your mate who is an accountant, and obviously a bright lad, sees an opportunity, but does he say to you, like, Adam, what do you want to build here? Like, do you want to just have a wee lifestyle business that we can take a cut on, or are you going to scale it out? What was the initial plan, and has that changed since you've opened your mind up a little bit to what's going on out there with technology and listening to talks and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it changed instantly, because my initial plan was, I've got this money, it's all I've got, now's the time to do it. Just before Christmas, really risky time to not have a salary. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build up slowly, and I'm going to scale it up maybe over the next couple of years. And when the money's there, I'll invest in these things. I won't have a website, right? People don't check out your website typically. My clients know me, so I'll build that in 6 months. When he came on board, I think he'd be angry if I called him an accountant. He's actually a businessman who runs an accountancy business. I think he's got 25 people looking after that side of the business. He does quite a lot of investments and works with some really, really sharp people, hedge funds, big manufacturing companies. He said, look, great. Well, listen, why don't we just do it right from the outset? Why don't we build the website? Why don't we get the technology you need? So I've got LinkedIn Recruiter. I know not everybody loves it. There's a lot of posts about growth hacking at the moment, and how you can get around spending money. But listen, let's spend the money. Let's get the tools we need. I've got the clients. The shift happened. I need the candidates. So the model with regards what we're doing and where we're going in the strategy is constantly changing. And I think that you need to have that mentality if you're working in these current times. You can't be rigid. You've got to be able to flip-flop. I'm working with a really broad section of industries. So we do sort of finance, we do manufacturing, tier one internet companies, advertising, technology. I think I have to be able to offer the best service and the most options to my candidates, and then that will naturally spread out. So growth with the company is going to be organic. So I want to get more people in. I've got people I've got in mind, but the business needs to pay for it. And I think that's the important thing.
Yeah. And do you see yourself, like some of the best businesses I've interviewed, like I had Joe Mullings on here. If you haven't listened to that one, he's worth checking out. Like he makes $9 million a year as a search firm off 20 people. That's unbelievable. Like S3 or Walters or whatever, they'd probably make like one placement a person.
Yeah.
Whereas his is like 3 and it's multiplied out. Now,
so is that a month? Is it one placement person a month or?
Yeah. The big agencies now, because they're carrying so much dead weight.
Yeah.
It's, and like when we started, it was easier because there was less competition. There was less people jumping in. Now that doesn't mean that they're not making loads of money. They're all posting record sales, but that's just because their costs are so high as well.
What's the actual bottom line on that? That's what I'd be interested to see, because with all of those costs, and also you have to manage those people. And for me, that's fantastic and great. And I see companies with 60, 70 people, fantastic offices, wonderful culture, but that's not really why I'm in it. To be fair, it might evolve into that, and I have got the ideas, but I want the right people. I want. There's quite a lot of friends I've made, as you'd imagine, over 10 or 12 years in recruitment. And there's some really good people that I'd love to, once this model is proven, which after 3 months we're covering ourselves, which is great. And the ambition I have for this year, which I'll definitely hit, will be realized. Then what I'd like to do is create some pro data franchises. But you have to find the right people. So then invest my money into people that I believe in based on the model I have, but not dictate to them. Say to them, look, great, here's 70K. That's what it's going to cost for the first 6 months. We'll have 70%. You can have 30%.
You mean like like SSR do?
But the only difference is in that this is the key differentiator, I believe. They don't give you a salary, and that's the biggest blocker for as far as I know, anyway. But that's
Hamilton Bradshaw do though.
I think that's really important, because you can have some fantastic people who would never make that transition into running their own agency, enjoying a quality of life, but also really loving what they do, because they are shackled to their commission, and they're shackled to the other companies and the way of working, and that fear. If I've got a model I've proven and a good story I can tell, then these people, if I know them as well and they can see what I'm doing, and chances are they would have worked with me as a freelancer, I would have given them a few jobs to work, then they can make that transition. But it'll be a case of, look, what do you need to be a success? What do you believe in? This is what we've done. What support do you need? Let's speak in a month, or we can speak in a day. It's down to you. So when they've paid back the investment, then we'll switch up the percentages in their favour. So I think it's a good model.
Yeah, you have to really nail proof of concept and then make sure it doesn't interfere with your existing business and platform.
Absolutely. But it's people that you know and you trust and have become your friends, rather than just, hey, that guy looks good, let's get him, because that's risky. So, I mean, as I said, you make friends and enemies over the years in recruitment, for sure.
Did you explore the Hamilton Bradshaw route?
I didn't, to be honest with you. I thought that I was going to be the last place I was working as an employee. I was down there to approve a concept down in London. This was just before I made the sort of change to Pro Data. And the idea was, come and show us what you can do. You've done it previously. Build up your money. I'm an investor in people. And once you've got your money, we'll transfer all of your contractors across to the new entity. we'll give you 30%, Adam. We'll have 70%. You'll open the St Albans offices. Great. But when I actually went down into London, I realised I didn't like going to London anymore. I thought it was pretty pointless getting up at 5 a.m, travelling in, working, wearing a suit when you didn't have meetings, having rules.
Break your heart, that.
Well, absolutely. There's little rules, like, for example, you're not allowed to drink during work. Now, let me explain that. What I mean is, if you go for lunch with a client or a candidate, I classically mirror them. So I say, look, what are you having to drink? I'm having a Diet Coke. That's what I'll have. But if a candidate I've placed wants a beer, it's at lunch, it's one beer. I want to be able to do that. But I was told I categorically couldn't. And those types of things started to bother me about going into London, working for somebody else. And so coming out the other side, I decided I didn't really want to be in business with that person. So now it's completely me. And the reason it works is I look after everything recruitment and operational. That's my responsibility. And my business partner looks after everything finance and tells me to stop spending money.
Yeah, that's good. Has he created a model where when you hit a certain point, you'll get your first on-site hire?
Well, we already have that. So, so I have somebody working with me as a resourcer. He's somebody I've known for many years. He comes from outside of recruitment, actually. And I think that's something that's becoming more interesting. But yeah, I mean, what we do is we review things on a needs basis, right? So at the moment, I can just about cover everything I've got. I'm actually working, as I said, I've got a friend who was recruitment 10 years. She used to work for me at another agency in London. She's godmother to my second child, Callum, I had to get that right. And she's taken a bit of a break, right? So she said, look, 10 years of recruitment, I'm taking a break. But now she's getting itchy fingers, right? So I said to her, look, I've got these contracts. They're the easy ones, right? Here's my login details for all the job boards and all the details. You go and cover those for me. It'll take you a day or two maximum, because there's quite a lot of contracts. And it leaves me to work harder perm stuff with clients I'm trying to win, as opposed to clients who already have exclusive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's not the agency model typically. What they'll do is they'll get people to work the harder roles. I'll see if it works out for them. And typically they get disillusioned and leave.
Yeah, it's more of an Americanized way. I think the Americans are they're not as good at scaling perm focused recruitment firms like the UK model, but they are very good at figuring out ways to do split placements, to getting freelancers on board, and to making money out of areas that they're not involved in. Yeah. There's an organization called the NPA, which is a global split placement network. So you could log on there. I haven't done it, but I probably will if I do ever jump into IT again. You log in anyway, and you pay a membership fee. It's very manageable, and you can work jobs anywhere in the world for people.
Okay.
So yeah, that's and you can also post jobs and have freelancers work on it. Now you give them a 50% split on the fee, and then that's that. There's a few groups online that do that as well.
Yeah, I'll check that out, because even if I don't subscribe myself, it's good to know what other people are doing. You've constantly got to have your eyes open to what's going on out there, and you could, even if you pick up a little something from each part, then it improves what you're doing.
And I know you've tried to focus a little bit on content recently.
Yeah.
What explain to me your thoughts on that?
Well, subconsciously, I think I've always seen it as something that's important, but because I've been so focused on being a recruiter, billing, making my money, it's just not something you can. If you're in business 12 hours a day, it's somebody else's business. You've got pressures, you've got other people around you. You can't really do the stuff that that's right, because you have to focus on what you have to do to bring the money in. So I wrote a few posts over the years, and they were more a case of sort of spur of the moment. If something hit me, and I'm not terrible at writing, then I'd write something, but a good graphic, make sure that it had a finish and an end, a top and the tails, and post it out there. And I sort of started doing that a few years ago. It was a light bulb moment when I really started believing in content. And when I started Pro Data, one of the key things was I enjoy doing that side of things. I started connecting with people and reading their content and starting to get an idea of how it works. I'm still learning, right? So as this is the first podcast I've been involved in. But I think if you put content out there, and one of the things that Bill said that sort of really resonated with me is that if it's not great, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as it has a point. And I think there's certain rules of engagement that I try not to break.
What are they?
Well, just adding to the conversation. It's fine to disagree with somebody, but you have to do it in a constructive way. Try not to rubbish anybody, because everybody has their own opinion, and they have.
Don't be
right.
Gary Goldsmith.
Well, it's funny you should say that. So yeah, I think we're both blocked by him, right?
Yeah.
So that is exactly right. And I think it's, look, I've sort of met the guy once, and it is what it is. But yeah, so if you're going to put yourself out there, you've got to be ready to have shots fired, right? And if you're putting out there stuff you really believe in, and stuff that isn't just shared, isn't just recycled. So I try not to recycle anything. I write my posts, and if somebody wants to comment on them, fantastic, because that's engagement. And you should never block anybody unless unless it's detrimental to your business and your brand. So this whole branding thing is becoming much more important for me, and it's exciting. I can do the recruitment side. I understand it. We're always learning, but this is a new sort of outlet for me. So I'm really enjoying doing it.
Yeah, it's funny, you have to make sure that the content thing doesn't take over. I don't know how much time I spend recruiting versus doing content now. So it's probably moving me even more towards the coaching piece.
Funnily enough, I've just got an email from one of my clients asking where the candidates are. I'm not going to tell him that I'm on a podcast. I said they're on their way.
Yeah, it's definitely getting harder. So if we catch up in 2 years' time, what will have changed in your business? Where will you be?
That's a great question. I'm glad you didn't say 5 years, because that's the old fashioned.
Who knows?
Well, exactly.
5 years. Who knows what 5 years in our game, eh?
So where I am now, where I'm sitting now, where I'm thinking about it without anything pre-prepared, in 2 years' time, I'd like to be working on other pro data, or whether it's fintech or whether it's accountancy. Obviously, my business partner being a finance guy, the model and the process is the same. And I'd like to be working on other people's businesses. I'd like to have handed this off to somebody I know. I've got somebody in mind, have an office in St Albans. The amount of people is irrelevant, but what I see is probably 8 to 10 really good people, enjoying a different way of working. I don't think the sort of 8 till 6 and late nights, I'm not for that. There's some stuff that I'd like to do, but you have to have the right people in the business. 10 till 3 working hours, but you have to have people working always on for that to work. So I guess in 2 years' time, to be working to have at least 2 more pro data franchises and helping to build them out would be a really happy and comfortable spot.
Great. And you've done a tremendous amount of learning in the past year. Like it sounds like you've had a real penny drop kind of moment with running your own business. All of a sudden, the whole world has kind of opened up to you in terms of what's out there and who you can learn. You've mentioned that you've been listening to this podcast. Who else are you following out there to get your information from? Are you in Facebook groups or?
So I try to stay away from it on Facebook. I mean, the majority of my social media at the moment is LinkedIn. I'm pretty much on that. Obviously, Hung Lee, everybody follows him. But I'll be honest with you, up till about 3 months ago, I mean, Mitch Sullivan, there's people that are standard that you just follow, right? But up to about 3 months ago, that's when the light bulb went on. I was much more a case of, look, I'm working in somebody else's. Well, it's been over about a year, but I'm working in somebody else's business. I know what I'm going to do. I'm a Luddite. I'm not going to change. But you are right. It has, since I've sort of started to have the idea, and definitely since I've opened Pro Data, I've started to connect, and I've started to follow, and I've started to look at what other people are doing. So I'm still quite of the mindset that I'm going to do things because I believe in it. But I'm much more open to hearing other people's opinions than I used to be.
Well, Adam, you've been a fantastic guest. You should really consider having your own podcast for your own niche. Is that something that you'd ever look at?
Oh, definitely. I'm as I said, I'm open to ideas. Let's see how this one is received, and we'll go from there. But it's very much like the boxing. So if we top and tails this conversation, right, you'll be really nervous, and I was a little bit apprehensive. But once you get in the ring, and it's you and I face to face, then it's good, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Adam. Talk soon.
All the best.
Well, massive thank you to Adam for coming on the podcast. Really excited that people like him are tuning in every week to educate themselves on things that they can do to improve their business. It's really where we wanted to be with this podcast. And I'm just really appreciative that he was so well prepared and answered everything so crisply, and just a great guest. And I predict he will be a massive success in the future. So, great podcast, great guest. Thanks so much, Adam. And thank you to everybody who's listening. We will be at 50,000 downloads by, I would say, the next 10 days. Currently sitting at 48,000. I know that means nothing to you guys, but when you're running a podcast, you kind of keep an eye on these things just to make sure that it's going in the right way. Getting excited for our New York trip. Wednesday week, we're heading out there. Hired a videographer, so I have to learn how to do that side of things, which is kind of exciting. So anyway, that's it for today, and we'll be back tomorrow with another amazing guest. Take care. Happy hunting.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.